Hello and welcome back to the Joe and Toby Talk podcast, which does everything that it says on the tin. We ramble on for an hour about something that is going on either in the world of sport or something nostalgic to both of us. That's kind of how we roll now. Last week we actually talked about our experiences as Bond fans, and in particular Toby's first year as a Bond fan, and it actually went down quite well. The views were pretty much in line with other episodes, so thank you very much for your support with that. Plenty of likes on it as well. Just a reminder, do get involved down in the comment section. We do like hearing your views on everything, and in that sort of vein, we are going to be talking again about something quite personal and something that's shaped both of our lives to, well, I guess meeting in the first place. I guess if it wasn't for this medium, we wouldn't be doing this right now. And that is the world of video games. And that is going to be the basis of our discussion today, our journey, our relationship with the video game industry, and how our lives started with that, and how our lives are now with that, and how different they are in themselves. So, hello, Toby. I know you've got a bit of a cold. But how are you doing? Are you looking forward to this discussion today?
The wounded carry on. The wounded carry on. I might have to blow my nose a couple of times, but I shall mute my microphone. The show must go on.
Mm-hmm.
I'm good apart from that. Little note for the viewers. The co-host of this podcast, the other co-host, not me, forgot what the topic was 2 hours before the podcast, so I had to remind you what we were talking about this week, because we organised it at the end of last week's podcast, and he forgot. So I've done lots of prep, got my props out, as is the done thing now, which will encourage you to watch this on YouTube. If you're listening to Spotify, most weeks now I tend to get some props out, which might be a bit of nostalgia.
Yeah. Toby's props.
Yeah, my props, and we'll talk about the annoyance that it's done for my video game collection in a minute. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this. It's a bit like with the Toby Jones channel now. I'm doing more videos where I just reminisce and comment on things that have happened in the past. Because I think we all like talking about things that have happened in the past, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think, especially at the moment, I mean, I feel like we've said this for years now, but there's not exactly a lot going on in the world that is to be happy about at the moment. Certainly for you as a Liverpool fan, it's not been a fantastic year. F1, we discussed a little while ago about how that's going downhill potentially. And obviously just the state of the world is not a great place at the moment. So I think it is quite nice to look back on those times of perhaps an easier time. And particularly when you're young and a child without responsibility. I think particularly our generations relied on the video game world and, the boom of online gaming as well. And I'm sure we'll talk about all of that. But I can tell you're dying to show some of your props, Toby. So, do you want to take us away with your journey through games?
Well, with that monologue, you've depressed me a little bit. But let's bring the cheer around the place. So, for context of those watching, I was born in 2001. Were you 97?
97, yeah.
97. So I was, I guess, born just as the PS2 era was starting. And I played a couple of games on the PS2. So probably the first thing I ever remember was this. The Simpsons Hit and Run. Absolute classic of a game.
Mm-hmm.
I also remember this. At the age of about 5, GTA San Andreas.
Yeah.
Playing this with my sister, and when my parents found out that there was swearing in the game was very swiftly taken off us. Another favourite, another classic from back then was FIFA Football 2004. So those are just the highlights really of the PS2 era. There's fair amount of other games I played, but really because I was only sort of 5 or 6 at the time, there wasn't a lot. I think that my main era was the Xbox 360 era. That was kind of the golden era for me because I was going from sort of 7, 8, and then the Xbox 360 took me into the early high school years. So, again, I could have got everything out here, all the games out, but I've got them ordered from A to Z, but on 2 different stacks in the wardrobe. Now, the problem is, if you take 3 off the top stack, the other ones take 3 off the bottom stack, the ones on the top go to the bottom. So I've got FIFA 2001 up here, then FIFA 2002 at the bottom. It's a bit chaotic, but so I could have got everything out. But I think when I was about, and I can't remember this exactly now, when I was about 7, we had our first Xbox 360, which is quite weird because we had the PS2, so we were PlayStation.
Yeah.
And then went over to Xbox for the Xbox 360, and to be honest, I can't remember why. And this was at a time where Blockbuster was a big thing, so we used to rent games rather than buy them. And I can't remember what many of those were. I remember one of those was Viva Pinata, which was a classic. But that was kind of that era. I remember a lot from then. I played a hell of a lot of FIFA 2006, the Road to the World Cup game, which I don't own now. That was a great game. And Guitar Hero as well. I even had for my 7th birthday, I've still got cringy pictures of that, where I actually got the actual guitar itself. I only gave that away not long ago to my sister who wanted it for something. So I can't show that as a prop today. But then, after that, very quickly, came the Kinect era. I bet you haven't heard of the word Kinect for a couple of years, have you?
No, funnily enough.
That was massive, wasn't it? It was. I very much remember back then the videos that everybody thought that like COD. It was kind of what VR is now. People thought it was going to be, I guess, to an extent.
I suppose because of the Nintendo Wii, that was Xbox's response to that, wasn't it?
Well, I'm going to go back and forth because I'm going to talk about the Wii in a bit, so that's a very good point. But yeah, the Kinect era was massive, all the games there. And then shortly after this, again, it's not in complete chronological order, so there's some overlap. I'm going to talk for a couple of seconds about, I can't remember this game exactly, but it was one of the Tiger Woods games. And I'd have been 9 or 10, and I was playing a 3-player game on this with my dad and my brother. Used to get a bit excited at that age, and I missed a putt on the green. And as you do as a 9 or 10-year-old, I've got the controller like that. It flies out of my hand, hits the telly, and all the bars go up on the TV.
Oh dear. I've not heard this story.
And oh no, I guess you haven't. And I broke the TV. And from that day onwards, I've never lived that down. The only thing, it wasn't a very good telly anyway. So it was a Sony, and we upgraded it to a Samsung. So obviously that was a positive. But that was in the day where you would pay. Unfortunately, it wasn't that TV where you'd pay like 4 figures because those were the first 3D TVs.
Oh wow!
And everybody, but not that TV itself, not long after that, it was the 3D TV. And people thought you could probably watch EastEnders in 3D, and people got really excited about that. Again, another thing like Kinect, which didn't really deliver, faded out very quickly. So that's an interesting thing. Also around this point, I guess just going to high school at this point, really, playing a lot of the Zombies mode online, as you say, for the first time, really, with friends. That was a big thing back then. As you allude to, there was also the Wii, which was around a little bit before this. I mean, Wii Sport, Wii Fit. A lot of the Wii games are just great. And we had a Nintendo Wii here, but my grandparents also had a Nintendo Wii as well. They bought one, and I mean they were 70 plus at the time. And I used to play the tennis with my nan on Wii Sports, and that console really was amazing in bringing video games to anybody of any age because it was just so accessible. It was pick up the remote and go, wasn't it? There wasn't anything else you needed. So the Nintendo Wii was fantastic.
I don't think there's been a console that has transcended so many generations and so many households as the Nintendo Wii. You know, people that don't play games probably had a Nintendo Wii. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I used to play Ashes Cricket 2009 on the Wii.
Yeah, I did as well, yeah.
I'd be down my grandparents like playing a test match, and my granddad would be like suggesting which bowlers to go for and spinners. And there's me with the remote, thinking I'm like a competent spinner, spinning the ball only with the Wii remote. Yeah. Even though on that game it made no difference. You clicked A and then just chucked the remote. Chuck the remote because I need to learn.
Well, that's why they got wrist straps.
Yeah, that's the exact reason. And trust me, I remember to put them on every time. But I had so many hours of fun on the Wii. It was excellent. Obviously, the first new era Codemasters F1 game was on the Wii as well. F1 2009.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
And I can't remember whether it was before or after this. So we did have a PS3 as well. My sister had a PS3, but didn't use that much until I bought this. F1 Championship Edition. Mm-hmm. And I still hold to this day that this is the best Formula 1 game of all time. I spent hours and hours and hours on this game. Mm-hmm. Obviously, to that point, it was by far the most realistic F1 game with I think the proper TV presentation. You had some of it in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
But this F1 Championship Edition was just absolutely awesome. Absolutely awesome.
And I think it probably helped that it was the only F1 game out there.
Yeah, that was it, wasn't it? Yeah.
2006, 7, 8. You know, that was the only F1 game you could play, so...
Yeah.
That's not me saying it's not the best game of all. I actually agree with you. I think in terms of fun factor and having the TV style and having commentary on the races, I don't know why they've never done that since. To be honest with you, every other sport.
Would you really want it with Croft?
But every other sporting game has commentary.
Yeah.
I don't understand why F1 doesn't, considering it's such a individual sport. In that, if you're like the advantage of having commentary is you always know what's going on in the race. Yeah. If you're sat in 17th as an F1 driver, yes, it's not necessarily realistic for you to know what the battle is going on up ahead, but I don't really care. It should be an option at the very least.
Yeah,
you could turn it off.
You
know, which I know a lot of people with Snooker 19 turned the commentary off. You know, they wanted that immersion. People do it with, tennis games is another one that tends to not have commentary, and it's a very odd one.
Yeah.
But complete tangent already, Toby.
Well, I'm going to say next, Jonathan Agnew.
Hey.
So can you guess what it is? Yes. The commentary lines that haven't been re-recorded for 20 years. This was a complete fluke getting this. International Cricket Captain 2011. I think I just saw it on Amazon. I hadn't long had my first laptop. Obviously, you could play it on a potato of a computer.
But you still can.
You still can. But by this point, I'd played Ashes 09 and International Cricket 2010 that had come out the year later.
Yeah.
And then got into this and really enjoyed it. And when I think, actually speaking live now, this is the first management game I ever played, which is interesting because that set things up for things to come, really. So it was about this time, as I say, I went into high school. And it was about this time I also started doing YouTube videos. Mm-hmm. And YouTube has played such a big part in my gaming journey, really, because not long after starting YouTube, I started doing F1 League Racing on F1 2012, I think was the first one. I'd got to know other people who did videos, and they did leagues and all that sort of stuff. So on a Friday evening at 7:30, there was something called the Mammal League, which I was in. And if like we went out for tea on a Friday night, I was like, I've got to be back by 7:30. This is the most important thing ever. I've got to be back. And then, of course, with my internet by 20 to 8, I'd disconnected anyway. But that just sums it
you
up.
and Tia McMurdoch.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, of course, best buds. But yeah, that was a massive thing for me. And then around the same time, I was introduced to Football Manager for the first time, and that was 2012. My brother was playing it at one point, and I know I'd played cricket captain, and I thought, I'll try this. And ever since that 2012 game, I bought every FM since. And I'm going to show what I consider to be I think this is my most played Football Manager, 2015.
Okay.
And was actually the last time before 21 that I won a league.
Oh god. Oh god.
Albeit that was with custom tactics as well. So that's a bit embarrassing. But yeah, I played every FM since then. For YouTube, I played FIFA, F1. I had a bit of an identity crisis back then. I didn't know what I was in terms of a content creator, so I flitted between the two. Around this time, a bit later, originally on the Xbox 360, so ignore this Xbox One for a second, we had GTA 5. And I spent a massive amount of time online making videos on this as well. That was excellent. I'm kind of going through this quite quickly now, because I could go on for hours. But
please do.
I've made a note. 2016-17, Mr. Goodspeed comes in. And it was around about the time, I mean, you might remember this differently to me, I might not be remembering it right. Around this time, I'd bought not bought back, but bought a PS2. Because I wanted to relive some of the retro games. And I think I bought a couple of games and SSX and some of the FIFA games and other stuff. As you can imagine, I was too tight to buy The Simpsons Hit and Run because that was like a £5, and I was like, I am not paying more than 50p for a game. You know how I am. Somebody else bought The Simpsons Hit and Run, and I thought, oh, okay, I'll have that for my collection. So I did a series on my channel called Retro Sundays, played a lot of PS2 games there. I ended up buying like 100 PS2 games and wish I hadn't bothered. But one lesser thing, because it didn't really relate as much, but one big thing is that I was actually introduced to snooker through this. World Snooker Championship 2004, which I did a series of on my channel, and I'm sure you remember it very well.
Yes, yeah.
The games against Marco Marzotti and Darren Morgan. Look at him there. Look at him. The
John
main
and
men.
Dennis.
The main men. Look at him. Lovely.
Look how young Dennis is in that picture.
Yeah.
But that's a 20-year-old game now.
They've aged gracefully. Look at Steve Davis on this middle shot. It's not exactly optimum graphics, is it?
No.
Oh dear.
No.
But yeah, that was a big thing because it was your 2005 series and buying this that introduced me into snooker. Because that was a massive thing. And I was going to also mention the James Bond as well. It's not as literal because there was events coming after that. See last week's video for being introduced to James Bond. From then onwards, considering I was a big FIFA and F1 player, and we'll talk about this a bit more later, the last FIFA game I bought was 2018. So I used to buy the FIFA and F1 games every year without fail. 18 was the last FIFA game I bought. I guess we're on 23 now, are we?
Yeah. Well, the 23 and final FIFA.
Yeah, God, yeah. And the last F1 game I bought was 2019.
Okay.
So we've had a gap. I think at that point I started buying a couple of games online. So I bought Rory McIlroy PGA Tour. Spent a load of time on that. The golf game, adored that. That was the last probably big game for me. Apart from this, which if you watch my YouTube channel you'll know about, Snooker 19. But I think both of us have put hundreds, if not thousands of hours into this video game.
I've definitely done thousands. I know that.
So we kind of then get to. I mean, this is Snooker 19. We then get to around this point, I was just finishing my A levels, so
Mm-hmm.
I was just starting work, all that sort of thing, and then COVID hit, and I picked up a game called Starter's Orders, which
Oh
was
yeah.
a horse racing simulation game.
Mm-hmm.
And after 3 years of me and you playing it, we still don't have a clue what we're doing, but I enjoy it nevertheless.
No.
Um, last year, I mean, I haven't even mentioned this yet. The old F1 Manager.
Yes.
F1 Manager 99, as I suppose it was. Hundreds of hours on that. That was one of my favourite games as well. But the new F1 Manager, the Frontier F1 Manager that was released last year, I played a lot of that as well. I've really enjoyed that this year. So, to summarise where I am now, I guess I just play the management titles, like Football Manager and F1 Manager. I don't really play it a lot more. The only thing I have done is gone and played James Bond Agent Under Fire a couple of months ago. I found a website called Backlogged where you can log all your video games, and as I've said previously, I love logging anything I've done, getting a diary, so that might persuade me to play a few more games. But I think a couple of things just as notes which will develop into a discussion later. By the way, I think this is going to be longer than an hour, I can tell. But I think both of us, when you work, you haven't got the time really that you used to have. When you were maybe in your mid-teens, you'd be back at 4 o'clock and not a care in the world, and you'd spend 6 hours on games every night. Secondly, I think you get different interests, and obviously a big one for me is music and other things. And thirdly, for me, those of you who don't know, for years have really struggled with headaches. That's why I wear these things, these anti-glare glasses. And too much screen time for me just gives me too much of a headache. Not as bad as it was, but that was another thing that turned me off games and wanting to experience things a bit more rather than just being in front of a screen. But that's probably as brief as I could be.
Shops
Yes, the charity shops and records and CDs, which fills up my bedroom now rather than games. But it's something, isn't it? But that's as brief as I could be. So I'm gonna throw it over to you and shut up for a minute.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what you said sort of rings home with me as well, I think. I think I was probably 3 or 4, I think, when the first time I played something on the PS1, and it was a game called Driver. I did do a retro show on that. Not a retro Sunday, but yes, Driver. And that was my first ever game that I remember. So my uncle used to have a PS1, so that's where I used to play those games. I did eventually get a PS1 myself, and then round my godmother's house, her son used to play GTA Vice City. So you can sort of see the age discrepancy between me and you, really, with this. That Vice City was my first GTA experience. And, I mean, those of you that have followed me a long time will know that I'm quite into buses as a mode of transport. And I was mesmerised that on GTA Vice City you could drive a bus. And so basically it was my bus simulator of 2003 or whatever it was when I got my first PS2, 2002 I think. And
Rockstar's Bus Simulator.
Yeah, and genuinely sunk hours into GTA just driving around. Genuinely just driving around, not completing any missions. I would honestly spend hours upon end, to the point where I followed a bus round in a car, and I learnt the bus route, then stole a bus and drove the bus route. And in this game, genuinely, this is a thing that Rockstar thought of. If you are driving a bus on Vice City, this is none of the other GTAs, just Vice City, and you pull up to a bus stop, people can get on, and you got $5 every single time somebody got on. They never got off the bus. It was an unlimited bus, infinite bus. And I would do that, spend hours, brilliant. And then one day, I decided to shoot somebody in the head. And
Hang on, sorry, in real life.
Well, yes, in that game, the blood sort of squirted out the top of their neck, vertically, and I remember showing my mum that, going, "Oh, watch this."
Watch this.
Yeah, watch this. And funnily enough, that was the end of my experience with GTA Vice City at that point, which was a real shame because I absolutely loved the driving about on that. But that is probably my earliest memory of proper gaming. Now you can call it proper gaming if you want, but yeah, that's sort of what I did. There was also a football game called This Is Football, or TIF, 2003. That was one I played a lot. That was my first football game. So that's sort of where it all began for me. Fairly soon after that, there would have been maybe some of the war games. So like Call of Duty, Finest Hour, Medal of Honor. I used to play quite a lot of. And there was a game called SOCOM US Navy SEALs, and that was my absolute favourite. The 24 the game. You know, I'm thinking of a lot of these old ones. And of course, I was a huge Bond fan, so Nightfire was actually my first Bond game. Came before Agent Under Fire for me. I could never actually work out. I did get Agent Under Fire fairly soon after, and I could never work out how to play that properly. And I don't know why. I think we've both said going back to it, it's quite clunky with the controls. So maybe then it was.
I think the basically if you click the first control, well, if you don't change the controls, it's actually inverted. So the right stick is to move around, then the left stick. It's completely inverted. And I guess at that age, if you don't know how to do that, it's confusing.
Yeah.
And what you said there really resonated, that you spent hours and hours with the bus. Not so much that, but that
I'm not sure anybody did that except me.
With until I guess recent years, really. My aim was never to complete the game. It was just to have a bit of fun in the game. There was no, as you say, there was no interest in missions. It was just have a bit of fun, and that's just the innocence.
Drive some fast cars, drive a bus.
Yeah,
that was genuinely what GTA was for me. And yeah, I guess, and I'm sure we'll get onto it at some point. But I guess I never really thought about completing a game to 100% until trophies or achievements existed, and I'm sure we will talk about that in a bit, because I know you did a bit of achievement hunting in your YouTube day or Twitch days, I think. But yeah. So you've got all of those on PS2 that I'm getting involved in, and I was quite big on lending games from friends.
Yeah,
we used to sort of share out games. That's not really something that you can do anymore. And I think what was so fantastic about the PS2 era, and we've talked about this on our old podcast, Tuesday Night Live, but it's the fact that you can buy a disc, and you still can buy a disc, and you can pop it in your PlayStation, and within 2 minutes, you will be playing that game. That's not the case anymore for any game that you buy for PS5, Xbox Series X. You obviously have to install the games first, and that started with the PS3 era. And I think that absolutely changed the landscape of gaming for me, because no longer could you just go, right, here you go, you can have the game for the night and then give me it back tomorrow, and they might have played 4 or 5 hours of that game. It would take them probably 4 or 5 hours to install it now. On their system, and that's something that's quite sad, I think. You know, I think that's what made gaming so accessible to everybody back then. But yeah, PS2, I think we've both said it, is probably the greatest era for gaming because of the sheer volume of games that there is out there. Obviously, we'll go on to online gaming in a little bit, but people can see the background of my videos. I've got hundreds of PS2 games, and there's lots of them I've never played before, but I do plan on playing them at some point, and that it is something that I wish we could have more of now. I guess it's more of the competition. Back then we had 6-7 different football games. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you were somebody that preferred a simpler game, a bit like PES or This Is Football, for instance, much simpler games than what FIFA became, then you could. But you don't really have that option now.
I've never thought of it like that. You're so right. Yeah.
But, we say, there's 5,000 games on PS2. Yes, that's because there was a Call of Duty, a Medal of Honor, Brothers in Arms. There was so many different variants of the same genre.
Yeah.
You had movie games.
Lots of them.
You don't have that now.
No.
Particularly, some of them you do, but generally you don't anymore, and that's a real shame. There was a thing. Obviously, Star Wars was pretty massive when we were little. The prequels were out, coming out, and there was a big push on Star Wars games actually, and LucasArts, who make the games, they actually made it a purpose choice to make a different genre of Star Wars game for all of the different genres. So there was an RPG Star Wars game, there was a racing Star Wars game, there was a movie tie-in Star Wars game, there was strategy Star Wars games, there was all sorts. And you just don't really get that anymore, and that's such a shame. And I suppose it's the money that goes into it now. Developers don't have the capacity to be able to go and put their vision into a small budget game.
Yeah.
That we didn't really care back then. I guess because it had to be right on the disc. I was going to say we didn't care about bugs and that sort of thing back in the day. But there was far less bugs because the game that went to print, that was it. There was no patches.
Yeah.
That was that. So yeah, that was my early journey with games. Obviously, we then had the next generation with PS3 for me. Pretty much everybody that I knew went to Xbox, Xbox 360. Obviously, it came out a year before the PlayStation 3, which I think massively helped. It was cheaper than the PlayStation 3. Again, that helps. But for me, it was that familiarity, I suppose, of having a PlayStation. I never particularly liked the look of Xbox. I really despised the look of it, the original Xbox. I think it sounds weird, but the whole green, it looked weird. It didn't look right to me. Whereas PlayStation 2 looked very clean. It looked very normal. It's what I'd always known. So that's what I went for in terms of the console I wanted. And I didn't actually have internet access till 2009, so I missed the start of the whole online boom, if you like.
Yeah.
So, of course, the big thing back then, Xbox Live cost £40 a year, I think. Was it £40 a year? Something like
sounds
that.
about right. Yeah.
And PlayStation Network back then was free, so that was massive. And I know certainly over that sort of console generation, more and more people migrated towards the PlayStation as the time went on, and certainly by the time GTA 5 came out, most people were on PlayStation by then. which again is very interesting. But a lot of my online days was spent playing COD. I have to admit,
Yeah.
it was Modern Warfare 2, Black Ops 2 were the big ones for me. I'd spend hours and hours and hours just wasting away time, I suppose. But yeah, that was awesome. I don't particularly remember playing much else online back then, other than COD. Wasn't really into playing F1 online or anything like that. Obviously, F1 2010 came along. That sort of coincided with my real love of F1 starting. You know, I was into F1 by that point, but I think that era, 2009, 10, 11 to 13, that was when I was really into F1. And that game, I know you've said it for F1 Championship Edition. For me, F1 2010 just encapsulated everything that it said. I can't live the life, I think, is what its tagline was at the time. And genuinely playing that game for the first time, that was the first time I was like, oh my goodness, this is realistic. And that's hilarious looking back, because it's really not. But I just remember looking at the driver's hands on the steering wheel. I remember being in that paddock for the first time and seeing your teammate stood next to the motorhome, and it was just completely awesome. And I did 2 lots of 7 full season career modes on that. Started another one before F1 2011 came out, but that's where my time went with it. Obviously, FIFA was massive back then as well. Career mode was still good, or manager mode as it was called back then. Played seasons upon seasons of that. And the cricket games, you know, I haven't even mentioned Cricket 07 on the PS2. I cannot believe EA have not made a cricket game for 16 years at this point, because that was awesome. What a cricket game that was. And again, that came out just at the time I was getting into cricket properly. So all of these big games come out as I'm getting into those sports. And I suppose snooker. Haven't even discussed snooker, Toby. You know, what am I doing with my life? But again, that was a big part of me. So I got very much into the sports side of things. I do remember, though, it was 2009, and I picked up Football Manager 2008. And I know you talked about when you started playing FM or Cricket Captain as well. I had played Cricket Captain on the PS2, actually. International Cricket Captain 3, it was called, in 2007. I played a lot of that. And I played a lot of Championship Manager 2007 on the PS2. So that's where that side of things started for me. But getting FM 2008 and playing through that, and then for the following Christmas, I got Football Manager 2010, which had just come out. And I have to say, I think that changed my gaming trajectory forever, really, because most nights I was coming home and spending 3, 4, 5 hours on Football Manager.
Yeah.
Whereas before it was a mixture of COD and FIFA and F1. And all of a sudden FM took over, really. So I suppose, you know, out of all of the games, and maybe you'll resonate with this as well, FM is perhaps the most addictive.
Yeah, frustratingly addictive. Even up to yesterday, I was banging the table because my winning run with Stevenage come to an end. So it's a love-hate relationship with FM.
Yeah, and it's I think with FM, the beauty of it is that it's an infinite world.
Yeah.
And speaking of infinite worlds, another big game for me was Minecraft.
Yeah, I haven't mentioned that either.
Yeah, I certainly wasn't among the first wave of Minecrafters, you know, circa 2009-10. However, I watched a certain YouTuber Vicstar123. And he did a Minecraft PS3 series. I don't know
Yeah.
when it was. It was about 2011, 2012. And I absolutely loved it. I don't know how I discovered it. I don't know why I discovered it. I think somebody else had actually introduced me to Minecraft.
Yeah.
And I was basically trying to learn what on earth was going on. And watched that, lost thousands upon thousands of hours to Minecraft on the PlayStation 3.
Just to interrupt you there,
Yeah.
I think when they bought it, I mean, I don't know if you'd agree with me, but I think when they brought Minecraft out on the consoles, it made it a lot more accessible, didn't it? Because the PC version, from the little bits I've played of it, it's not clunky, but I think it's a lot more difficult. Like if I remember right, the crafting you have to put in yourself, whereas on the
Oh, well, yeah, you have to know the
version,
recipes. Yeah.
yeah, that's it. So
Yeah.
simple things like that. But I think that the putting them on the consoles, yeah, that massively made it more accessible. I was similar to you that about that time, yeah. Obviously on the 360, I started playing Minecraft, and then ended up with the Minecraft Xbox 360 version, the Minecraft Xbox One version, and then they ended up just putting a free version on Marketplace on the Xbox. So I actually ended up with 3 separate versions of Minecraft.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've got PlayStation. I've got it on Switch actually as well. And PC. And to be honest, PS3, PS4 Minecraft is where I've spent the bulk of my time in terms of my Minecraft journey.
Yeah.
And what a game that is. And you know, I think again it's that infinite possibilities, that infinite world of freedom really.
That was it. I think that was what it was weird because thinking about it, I wasn't into anything like Minecraft. So I don't know why it resonated, but I think even now, I mean, you'll remember, I think last year, around, I guess, Queen's Jubilee time, I was playing a lot of it. And it was just really, pardon the pun, really peaceful because it was just a break and like you could have your own farm and breed animals and all that. And it was just really nice that it wasn't story driven, it wasn't pushing you to do anything, you could
Yeah.
do anything you wanted. And I think even though FM there's an infinite of possibilities, effectively it's the same game that you're playing football, but in Minecraft you can do absolutely anything. And I think sometimes that's really frustrating, but other times I think it's great. The real release, which I think are what video games are supposed to be.
Yeah, and I think another thing about Minecraft is the graphics are nothing to be desired. You know
Nope.
that they're blocky. They're pretty terrible. The graphics of Minecraft, to be honest, they're meant to be, but they are pretty terrible. And nobody has ever complained about the graphics of Minecraft. Anybody that's enjoyed playing Minecraft, anyway.
Yeah.
And I find that really interesting because I think it was probably around about that time that games really started caring about how they looked. And, you know, in particular, some of the last games on the PS3 cycle really cared about how they looked. You know, I'm thinking The Last of Us, I'm thinking Uncharted. GTA 5 is an incredible looking game.
Yeah.
And perhaps with that focus on having the absolute best visuals you possibly can, have we lost focus on what you say is what video games are about and that escapism? And one thing GTA certainly got right was they gave you that freedom with GTA Online, and you know, that was the next big thing really, of just sinking thousands of hours into this world. And this was before really GTA became pay to win. I think it's pay to win now. It certainly wasn't in those first few years.
No.
And I think that's what made it. It was you put the hours in and you will get rewarded.
Yeah.
you can have the best apartments in the game, you can have the best cars, you can have the best weapons, but you've got to work for it. You've got to level up, you know. And wow, I mean, what an experience that was. And still
Yeah.
is to some extent. You know, I mean, I can't believe that in September it's going to be 10 years old. And still,
It holds
I
up
mean,
as one of the best
it's
games,
probably
doesn't it?
bigger now than it was 10 years ago in terms
Yeah.
of player base, in terms of fame, and that's unheard of for any
Yeah.
game, really. I can't think of another game that has lasted that long, other than Minecraft, perhaps, but I think if you looked at a graph of Minecraft players, we'd certainly be on the downward slope of that, I would imagine.
I think what Minecraft GTA has done particularly well is they've kept it refreshed, haven't they? They've
Yeah.
added new things to the game. I remember even when I was still playing, they added heists online,
Yeah.
which were really cool to play with friends. And I know they've added lots and lots of things ever since. And obviously, it's just made it playable for people because inevitably, if not, you end up, even though it's an open world game, you run out of things to do. So for them to support that game for 10 years is why it's in the position it is now, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And 2015 comes around, so not long after all of this, you know, GTA malarkey, PS4 generation begins, and I start YouTube, and um, I think it's fair to say that that has been the biggest change of what games I play, and maybe the reason I'm still playing games. I don't know that for certain, but you know, I made a conscious effort to make daily videos. I was playing Football Manager more than ever. But not only that, I was playing other games. You know, I brought in F1 fairly soon into that. Obviously, Cricket Captain was a game that I got back into because of YouTube. And probably the reason I still get that game every year is because of YouTube. I'm not sure I would have put up with it so much
No.
in terms of the lack of changes. And I certainly know Snooker 19, we played a hell of a lot of that. And I think that was because of YouTube. And no, I'm not saying it was a bad game. I don't think it was. But did it really have the immersion? Because you can't play as your own player. Did it have that immersion in that story? Or was it because we created that world and that story for our YouTube series? Is that
I'd
why?
say so.
You know, would I be bothered to play a best of 35 match in the world final? Probably not. I mean, I used to do it with World Snooker 2005, but I think overall, in terms of the extras of that game, in terms of being your own character, the commentary, the being able to see tournament trees, which seems ridiculous to bring up, but seeing all of that, I think, made it a more immersive experience than Snooker 19. So I think for me, I've played games more than ever, but less games because of YouTube. I certainly don't play online much anymore. I don't have any offline saves for anything particularly. Everything that I do has a purpose now, I guess. But that doesn't mean I don't enjoy games anymore. You know, I still really enjoy them, but I play them because I'm recording them. And
Yeah.
I'm not sat losing myself in GTA Online for hours. I'm not losing myself in Minecraft for thousands of hours anymore because, well, there's not enough hours in the day. We talked about this. But, yeah, that's kind of my story with gaming. And obviously the big thing for me now is collecting them. And, you know, I mean, I'm not as resentful as you are about the whole collecting.
I blame you.
But yeah, I mean, I made a conscious effort of discovering everything that I would be interested in the gaming world and getting them basically.
Yeah.
And born out of that, I found the best quiz game ever in the world. Who Wants to Be a Millionaire second edition. That was a complete surprise to me how good that was. And I never would have done that had I not been collecting video games.
Yeah.
Equally, I probably wouldn't have wasted my money on something like Racing Simulator 3. Although, to be fair, that wasn't bought for collection purposes. It was bought
to wind me up.
Well, no, it was actually bought during the days of I wanted an F1 when I was playing Cricket Captain and Football Manager. I wanted an F1 manager experience, and I thought the words Racing Simulator meant that.
No.
No.
No. No, 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 no. Well, that was just a terrible, terrible game, wasn't it? I think the big thing though, because you said you bought that around the time you were getting into was it Cricket Captain and something else?
Yeah.
How much did you spend on that game?
Oh,
Well, put it this way: was it £1 or £40? I'm just trying to make a point here.
I think it was probably about a fiver.
Okay, which to be fair, I guess at the age you were back then, it was a fair amount, I guess, because
Yeah.
I think the big thing, maybe looking back nostalgically at this, obviously you buy a game now with the bugs in it, let's say. You spend £40-50 on a game with bugs in, and you're fairly cheesed off because you haven't got your bang for your buck.
Yeah.
Whereas if you go and buy Racing Simulation 3 now for 50p, you can think it's a load of tripe, but you can have a good laugh at it because you've only spent 50p on it. It's nothing.
Yeah.
So I do wonder whether there's merit to the idea that people did spend that money back then and were cheesed off like they would be today. But the fact that those novelty games got made, I could be wrong because I wasn't around then to buy games, but I would guess that some of the novelty games, as some of the lower budget stuff, wouldn't have been as expensive on release, I would guess, as some of the main games, I would think.
I seem to remember the standard price was about 30 quid for a PS2 game. For a brand new one. And obviously, I think the second-hand market was a lot bigger back then. And fairly quickly, you could get something a lot cheaper. I think buying stuff on release day was probably a lot less common back then. So, yeah, I think people did get annoyed, perhaps, by games day one, but very quickly just went down their local game or game station or wherever and traded it in and got 23, 24 quid of their 30 quid back. And people were quite satisfied with that back then because that was just a done thing, I think. But,
yeah. But I think for us, really, I don't know what the answer to this particularly, but because you say you're playing more than ever, but less games. So I don't know whether it has gone wrong for you as such. It definitely has a little bit for me.
Yeah.
But I don't know, has it for you? And the question, I guess, is where has it all gone wrong? From playing all these games to now not so. And there's the life factors involved that we work, so there's less hours in the day. But ultimately, if you want to do something, you still will, but maybe not to the same extent. So what's changed within? Is there anything that's changed within games themselves to put you off?
Oh, it's a good question. I think online has changed. I think it used to be very much a place to have fun. People just played genuinely. I think now there's a lot of cheats. People cheat. People, of course, spend hundreds upon thousands of pounds improving their online character. And that might be GTA. That might be FIFA in terms of Ultimate Team. That might be Call of Duty. And I think that's maybe where my gaming has changed. I don't play online at all anymore, and
No.
I think there's such a big gulf in skill as well now.
Yeah.
If I go into a Call of Duty lobby, I'll just get absolutely obliterated. I find early in the game cycle, I'm able to go online. I tend to have fun with Call of Duty for the first week or so with some online games, and then all of a sudden, people get too good, and it's just not fun anymore.
Yeah.
I find that with FIFA as well. I could load up an Ultimate Team match, and I'd probably be playing an 11 of Team of the Season players and get absolutely obliterated. Similar with F1. I think it's got so competitive now. Obviously, we've got esports, but there was a charm of the open lobby back in the day, but now you just get people that ram into the back of you at turn one. And I do think a lot of the fun has been taken out of that side of gaming for me. Especially with GTA as well. Every time I've tried to go into a lobby on that, you just get blown up within 30 seconds. And that's not fun. For me, anyway, that's not fun. And I think that's where gaming has gone. I think there's a lot more what people call trolls online now. I think there's a lot of people that pay to win. And I think you yourself have to put a lot of money and a lot of time into these games to get anything out of them now. And that's a real shame. And I think where I'm going with this, my roots are in single player and playing campaigns of games. The first thing I will always play with Call of Duty is the campaign. That's the reason I still get Call of Duty every single year, is to play that campaign. And now I cover that on YouTube. I would play that anyway. But developers, because unfortunately the world is the way it is, people will put a lot more money and a lot more time into online. So why would a developer spend time making single player? Why wouldn't they just put their time into the online game modes? And I think, unfortunately, that's where it's kind of gone wrong for me with gaming, is that there's not many games that I play now because I guess there's not many that suit me anymore.
Yeah.
And I've spent every single E3 or PlayStation showcase or anything just sat there waiting for Splinter Cell to be announced, a new Splinter Cell. And we're 10 years since the last Splinter Cell game. I used to play Rainbow Six a lot, but again, I used to play the campaigns of Rainbow Six, and all of a sudden, it was about 2014, they brought out Rainbow Six Siege. I don't know if you've heard of that game, Toby, but that's online only, and they are still releasing content for that game. They've not made certainly a campaign, an original Rainbow Six game, since the PS3 days. So I guess that's where it has gone wrong for me, is games have gone more focused on the things that I don't enjoy anymore, and that's just a way of life, I suppose. But I think that's what happened with F1 as well. For many, I mean, there was even a there was a game, F1 2015, that didn't even have a career mode.
Yeah, I think that was a little bit different. I know where you're going with that, but I think that was a little bit different in that the quality of the F1 games was getting worse, because I don't really know why, but I don't think it was to focus online, because in fairness the game itself wasn't great. I mean, the 2014 game wasn't brilliant, and then 2015, yeah. But it still had the championship season, so it's halfway there. But like you say, still not great. But I think your point is a very good one in that it's just been over commercialized, and I think that's what's turned me off as well. I think that you can draw parallels with the music industry and film, I think, as well. That we're very much spoon fed into what we should play, what we should listen to, what we should watch, all because of Spotify, Netflix, streaming services. I've talked on my Toby Jones channel about why it irks me, so I'm not going to talk too much, but I think it comes into games as well that because of, funnily enough, and this is mocking the very thing that we've plunged thousands of hours into, YouTube. Because of YouTube, people spend a lot more time online, a lot more of the content comes from online play, and because, I mean, you had groups like the Sidemen, obviously on GTA used to, I mean, I didn't really watch the stuff, but that would be the same kind of thing, I think. They blow each other up and all the rest of it. So that became the norm, almost, what it was good to do in these games. And you on about Call of Duty there, the fact that, you know, they stopped focusing on the campaign is almost criminal, because the main point, if you're going to have an annual release anyway, is to focus on the game itself, which for me is a single player campaign. If you are going to just focus on the multiplayer, then just keep the same game. And I think, is that what they did in some way? I don't know anything about it, but it's coming to my head. Was it Call of Duty Warzone? Am I getting that right?
Yeah, so Warzone is Call of Duty's answer to Fortnite, I guess.
That's a big talking point, that game, by the way.
You know, Warzone is a free-to-play game. So it's separate. But you still, of course, have the massive popularity of what is Call of Duty multiplayer. So, I mean, Warzone is Battle Royale. That's separate to Call of Duty multiplayer. So that's a completely different ether that Call of Duty have gone for. But, yeah, no, it's an interesting point that you make, absolutely. And I think because Call of Duty is always focused on a different part of warfare, and I guess that's what you kind of mean by surely you focus on your campaign, which in their case is this snapshot of warfare. And
I mean, by the way, Call of Duty, rather than just being video games, I've played World at War and Black Ops, and I personally think they do, someone who's a bit interested in history, an impeccable job, especially World at War and conveying the horrors of World War II. And that for me is the brilliance of the video game. Absolutely fantastic. Particularly World at War, Black Ops to some extent as well. So to know that that's gone, I mean, you might be able to tell me a bit more, but the one that I haven't played that I'd like to play is World War II. Because I'd be interested in that, but based on what you say now, I might or might not.
Well, it's funny because I don't think I don't think the campaigns have got any worse, to be honest. No. I think the campaigns are still excellent. I just wish they were a bit longer. I think it's the only, a lot of games have got to be, for good or bad, they've become long. Lots of games have become 20, 30, 40 hours, 60 hours. I don't think Call of Duty needs to be that, but when it's only, 3 or 4 hours, it's not really enough these days, in my opinion, to warrant. And I think that's where I would improve Call of Duty. I think their campaigns are very, very good, still.
Yeah.
But that's where they could improve for me, is length of campaign.
Yeah. So, I think that, what's gone from for you is to focus on multiplayer.
Yeah.
For me, I don't know if I just lost interest, because bear in mind, a lot of it for me was kind of the annual releases, so F1 and FIFA. And once we got to the Xbox One era, there wasn't. So you went from PS2 to Xbox 360, which is a massive jump in
Yeah.
graphics.
Yeah.
And then we went from 360 to Xbox One as well.
And I think that was, funnily enough, an even bigger jump in terms of graphical focus. And of course, we had. I mean, we haven't even discussed the digital world of consoles and gaming, and it was around that time Xbox threatened to take away the disk drive of a. Oh, well, it wasn't so much the disk drive; it was they were going to go the Steam approach of you put a license key in that game, and that's then locked to your Xbox Live account.
Yeah.
As far as I remember, and obviously there was massive backlash about that, and I know that was one of the main reasons why I think people at the time massively went in favor of the PlayStation 4. But yeah.
No,
So
that's interesting. But I
yeah.
think, as I say, I mean, I was just playing the annual games, and I think because the Xbox One, there wasn't really a massive jump in graphics. I've become a bit disinterested, to be honest. And again, it was about the time I started playing on the PS2, and then it just gradually faded away. I mean, as you know, I finished up with YouTube, really, sort of late 2020, 2021. And the last surviving thing was Snooker 19. That was the only game I played. Snooker 19 and Football Manager, which has been a constant throughout. But apart from that, haven't really. I've gone back and played the odd game, like a couple of the Call of Duty games. Really enjoyed those. So I think how my gaming journey goes now is picking out these older games and almost going back in time because. As you say, the focus on the campaigns, the story modes, I think that's something that I would really visit. And I think there's lots of merit in the older PlayStation and Xbox games because, as you say, that's not the route that's been taken now.
Yeah.
It might be by some games, it might be generalising, but I think that might be what my way to go. And ultimately, that would be where I get my enjoyment from, I think. But obviously great games like this. Again, I've gone and replayed The Simpsons Hit and Run. That's got a storyline. Over 50 mayhem-filled missions it's got on the back. This had actual voiceovers by the cast of The Simpsons. The story was by The Simpsons writers. This was a proper game. There was a real, massive time that went into this game, and it plays like a great story. I have to say, it is really enjoyable, if not a little farcical. But then The Simpsons is effectively a bit of a almost family comedy, so you can accept that. Would there be a Simpsons game made today? Absolutely not. Has The Simpsons got the cultural nous that it used to have? No, probably not. But as you say, TV shows, movie games. You were on about 24 earlier.
Yeah.
Obviously, Harry Potter used to have the games as well. I think there was so many games that had, X film, the video game attached to it, and it was the done thing. Even you had films like Barnyard, which I played on the game of. I love that game, and you had most kids' films, Over the Hedge, Chicken Little. I mean, these are Disney, but there's
there's
other stuff
sorts.
that there is all sorts out there, and you just wouldn't get that now, and that is such a shame.
It is a shame. I think fairly recently, I think we had a SpongeBob game, but it was a remaster of an old SpongeBob game. They've not brought a new one out. And like you say, Simpsons might not be as popular now as it was in that time, but you think of things like Stranger Things, I'm Riverdale. I'm trying to think of quite Squid Game, even, things that are pretty massive in terms of popularity, but they don't have any sort of video game version, which is, I think, very weird. And I think that's possibly something that people did back in the day. to further promote their product, and they just
Yeah,
don't seem to do that now. And I don't know, it's a strange world that we don't have all of these, and even whole genres have been lost through that. The whole crime game
yeah,
genre's gone. I would say, on the whole, the TV show slash movie tie-in genre's gone. There are
yeah.
the odd few. I know there was a Peppa Pig game that came out.
Yay!
There is the odd few, and actually we're getting into a point now where they're making TV shows of video games.
Yeah, it's almost gone the other way, hasn't it? You're
Yeah,
right there. That's strange.
and I think there's such a big when on the story games that do exist now, there's such a big focus on script and acting and visuals, and they're becoming their own thing, I guess, and maybe that's where it'll go, and maybe in 20 years' time, Toby, we'll be saying, well, how come they're not making TV shows of The Last of Us anymore, or and we're saying, how come they're making all these video games of the inevitable Simpsons 50th season,
Yeah,
because it
yeah.
still won't have
Well,
been cancelled.
we'll see. One more point before we wrap it up for today, because we could go on for hours about
Yeah,
this. I
yeah.
think another big thing, which I've just thought of, my phone's on charge, so I'm not going to show it on the screen. I wonder how much the utilize, because the BlackBerry generation was around about I want to say early 20. It was just as I was going up to high school. I guess it was 2011, 2012, that sort of time,
People
wasn't
had
it?
them when I was in year 7, so
And then
2009.
and then you got to a lot of people having iPhones, smartphones. I think that's made a big difference as well in how people use their media time. Because, as you say, I guess video games were the first sort of, apart from film, really, the first sort of home entertainment. Whereas now people are just glued to social media, their phones. I do wonder whether that has some
Yeah.
element in it as well.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting thing. Whether because people's attention spans aren't as large anymore, whether the games have to go for the brash and all that, and have to be graphically good, or else people just lose interest.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's a great point, and obviously, video game or games on phones is a big industry as well.
Yeah.
Candy Crush was a massive game. Angry Birds, thinking of all of those sort of type of things. Obviously, the
Flappy
big
Bird.
Flappy
Remember
Bird,
that?
yeah.
And I kept that on my iPhone for like 6 months, and I thought, oh, and then I thought, oh no, never mind. Because after a while, the game just stopped working. But there were people who sold their phones, and it had still got the Flappy Bird app on, and they would fetch 4 figures, which is a bit bonkers, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Now kids buy bloody bottles of drink for hundreds of pounds.
Yes, Prime. Yeah, I mean, that's possibly where the world's going wrong, Toby. It could be that. Maybe we're just
sort them out,
boring.
Mr. Goodspeed.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, we've touched the surface of it, really. We've not talked massively, and actually, I think we both want to sort of open up the discussion, because we're just two people in this whole discussion, and we've got quite similar views, I guess, on it. But I do want to hear from people at home listening to this. How have your video game habits changed? And there'll be plenty of people listening to us that during those golden era times that we talk about, those mid 2000s, early 2010s, that were people in our position now that have jobs and had jobs back then. Did you find that you were the same in your video game habits back then, or are we right? Was it a golden era of gaming and online games, or is that just us remembering it fondly because we were little and had no responsibilities? Do let us know your thoughts down in the comment section. I think we will discuss this again. I think there will be a part 2. We've sort of talked about our journey and maybe what's gone wrong for us, but I think we can delve deeper into some of our favourite games and why they were our favourite games and what they mean to us. A little bit like the Bond one that we did last week. So I hope you've enjoyed listening to a little debate. Do you have any final things to add, Toby, before we go off into the ether?
No, I think, I should say, I think it's such a great discussion because it's been such a big part of both of our lives.
Yeah.
And now, particularly for me, it's not. I mean, things change, but it's inevitable. But it is an interesting topic how things have changed to lead to it, and I do think that maybe kids who were sort of 10, 15 years younger than us, when they look back on their time, are they going to see it as a golden age when they were the age that we were back then? Is it just because we are older now? Again, it's an interesting point. Or whether we did literally live in the golden age. Who knows? Maybe some people who are 15, 20 years older than us said, well, you didn't have a ZX Spectrum, did you? Or a Mega Drive, and that was the pinnacle. I guess it's whatever your opinion is, but I think we went through such a big change very quickly, and then it stagnated with the whole, on HD graphics you can't go that much further, that maybe that stagnated it. Who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. So do let us know your thoughts down in the comment section as always, and we will be back next week, perhaps with the part 2 of this, but more likely with something else, because there is something on the horizon, Toby, and it's to do with burning things and putting them into urns and fighting over them every few years. And it's usually to do with people playing in white clothes. Don't know. Le Mans, yes. Of course, if you didn't get the reference, the Ashes do begin, and we are planning on quite a bit of content around the Ashes. I've certainly enjoyed the Island test match, if you can call it that, 3-day friendly, over the last few days. I know you've been following along a little bit of it as well. And we will be previewing the Ashes more than likely next week. The squads have been announced and we can give our thoughts on what's going to happen in the first couple of test matches, but no guarantees that we're going to get anything right. But we're very good at waffling, so I'm sure we'll be able to wing it, as we always do. So, do keep your eyes open for that. Of course, get involved down in the comment section. Leave a like if you've enjoyed, and subscribe to the Joe and Toby Talk channel so that you don't miss a podcast. Thank you very much to Toby for battling through his illness this week, and we'll see you on the flip side. See you later.